Margins way higher, like 62 to 75%. Single unit in St. Louis, that was our strongest one to get around $1 million a year. Our bread and butter is really crime scenes and hoarding. There's not a lot of overhead. I mean, a lot of people can do it as a home-based business. Most of the crime scene stuff would be insurance paid or property management companies are paying it. It's 100% relationship based. There's just a lot of different people we talk about in their initial training class that you have to build relationships with and get their trust for them to refer you on. It's dangerous work. Not a lot of people want to do it.
Welcome to the show. Excited to kind of dive in. You own a very unique business model in the franchise space that I want to learn a lot about. So what is T.A.C.T?
Well, T.A.C.T is primarily a crime scene and biohazard hoarding remediation company. But there's a lot of different revenue streams our guys get into, but our bread and butter is really crime scenes and hoarding.
Okay. And then how'd you get into the business?
I was a police officer in St. Louis. And my wife and I just had our first kid, and I was, missing a lot of stuff and was working crazy hours and was thinking, one, kids are expensive, so I need to start making some more money somehow. And then, I don't want to grow up with them remembering that I missed everything. And it was just one Christmas morning, it made me think of it because Christmas is coming up. I had to get called out. It was our daughter's first Christmas, but she was just a few months old, so she didn't remember anything. But then I had to get called out and just had to miss the whole day. So that was the kind of final straw of me thinking I got to find something else. And I was looking into all kinds of things like insurance fraud investigation. My whole family's in the healthcare world, so I was talking with my dad about maybe starting like a Medicare fraud investigation company. And then I was just Googling like what kind of careers do police get into after police work. And I found a franchise that did this. So I was a franchisee. I was franchise number 4 with them, I believe. So it was a brand new franchise. I was kind of skeptical with doing it. And I flew out and met the CEO, the guy who's been on your podcast too. And him and I are still really good friends. I came back home and I was talking to my wife about it. And I'm like, because they're a brand new company. So I'm like, we just met in this little office in Las Vegas. And, I don't know how it's going to go. But she talked me into doing it. And I'm glad she did because it took off really fast in St. Louis. We were the first one in like the whole Midwest. So St. Louis was growing quick. And then we bought second franchise in Kansas City, and then ended up buying 6 states. So I became a master franchise owner.
Okay.
Went through a lot of different training to become a master trainer in the industry. All the guys in my master territory were doing really well. So Nick hired me to be like the number 2 person there at Bio One.
Okay.
I did all the training for all the franchises and franchise development and a bunch of other roles. And then 2019 or so, Nick told me I'm probably going to be selling pretty soon. And I told him from the beginning, if you ever are going to sell, let me know, because if he wasn't involved, I didn't want to stick around. So he sold, and I ended up selling everything. Took some time off, and I was thinking, like, what am I going to do next? As you know, Nick started like a restoration company. I was thought about following him there, and then I just realized I just like this industry too much. So waited out my non-compete and started T.A.C.T, and we opened our first location in January of 2021.
So you got out with the private equity buying out?
Yeah.
Buying one?
Right around the same time, yeah.
Is it in part too because they didn't want master franchisees? Like, did they want to kind of control it all?
I never stuck around to find out what they were going to do with that. But I assume stuff like that would be happening.
Because you got a percentage of their royalties, right?
Yeah. With the way they had it, it was 50-50.
So at its peak, how many were you operating? How many markets? Like when you were operating them, was it Kansas City and St. Louis?
Yeah, I had a couple in St. Louis and one in Kansas City. And then we had, if I'm trying to remember, I think 13 others in my master territory that were owned by other people, but they were in my...
I mean, that's a whole topic in its own of like in terms of managing remote markets, right? And like the challenges of, everyone starts local, but then as you want to expand, even we're going through this in the Midas business, we have 33 locations. We're looking at new
Nice.
We're looking at new markets. And it's this question of like, at what point does it, it just becomes like a struggle, right? The further you get, usually the more difficult you have, because like you just have less involvement, then you need better people, and it's just
Right.
there's challenges with all that. So let's get into the business itself. So crime scene cleanup and trauma too, right? Doesn't people always say they don't have to commit a crime doesn't need to be committed for you guys to come in, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we say crime scenes, all scenes like that, suicides and everything. They're looked at as crime scenes until they're not. So we say crime scenes, and a lot of people who are looking at buying a franchise, their impression is I should probably open where there's the most crime. And
Yeah, Cleveland. You're like,
yeah, we really don't get a ton of like murders and things like that because in most areas they happen outside, and in some states there's laws against it, but most states they just have the fire department just spray it down with a hose. But a lot of we get way more like suicides and undiscovered deaths than murders. So it's not like our guys are really working in high crime areas a lot of that.
It's like grandma dies and nobody, finds her for a week or whatever number of days, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly how I got into the hoarding. When I started with Bio One, we were just crime scenes. There was no hoarding, and so I started getting so many undiscovered deaths that were hoarders, and we do the undiscovered death, and the family would be like, "Well, what do we do about the rest of this stuff now?"
Yeah.
Nick and I'm like, we should start advertising for hoarding work too, because we could get a lot from that.
Can you take us to the Bio One days at least? Because you probably can speak a little bit more freely about that in terms of like what kind of sales were you doing? Like what are the back then? What were your kind of margins? Is this like a average ticket? And maybe speak from your experience as a large franchisee.
I mean, with just the single unit in St. Louis, that was our strongest one. Because I was here running it. I mean, it took about 3 or 4 years to get around $1 million a year, and we kind of stayed around that. But I think with one franchise, we probably could have grown bigger. But I mean, it took a few years to ramp up to that. But that's about what we were doing. Margins, when I was kind of doing everything myself, they were way higher. Like 62 to 75%. But the bigger we grew, and the more equipment, and vehicles, and employees and stuff we have, probably closer to like 45 to 55.
And those are net margins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's strong. I mean, it's super strong, right? I'm crazy at from a lot of like other industries. It's 15 to 20 is good.
Yeah,
doing $1 million. So why are the margins so strong in this business?
There's not a lot of overhead. I mean, a lot of people can do it as a home-based business, so it's low overhead. It's dangerous work. It can be dangerous work. So not a lot of people want to do it. So supply and demand kind of drive the cost up some.
Which drives the cost up, right? And it isn't heavy insurance paid? Is that true?
Yeah, most of the crime scene stuff would be insurance paid, or property management companies are paying it.
I'm assuming payroll is your biggest cost?
Yeah, definitely. Payroll, and depending on the state, the biohazard disposal. Some states have different laws about what you can do with the biohazard waste that we collect from these sites. Advertising is a big cost. That's another thing. Google ads in this industry are crazy expensive. So people spend a lot of money on that.
Walk us through like the staffing model of like a typical one. Assuming the owner's involved, maybe doing sales, but maybe not cleanups. What does that look like?
Typically, your average franchise that's been in business for a year or more, I try to coach them up to be where the owner is just doing the daily marketing, going to the events and things like that, and then you have a general manager. They're doing the bids, scheduling, managing the employees, equipment, and everything, and then maybe 1 or 2 part-time employees. Some people have more than that. Like some of our busier franchises have like 8 or 9 employees, but typically 2 or 3 people can do 9 out of 10 jobs. But some of our bigger hoarding jobs, you might need some extra help.
What are the employees, like the crew guys, making?
From what I've heard from our guys, anywhere from like 25 to 35 an hour.
Is it hard to find people who are willing to do this type of work?
Surprisingly, no. A lot of people worry about that when they get started, that especially in the last couple of years, they say finding employees is so hard. But most of our people say they've never even put out a job ad. People are just contacting them saying, are you hiring? Because this just sounds like exciting, interesting work. So they really haven't had any problems finding people. I'm sure like any business, finding reliable people is the struggle. But they haven't had any problem finding people.
I have a friend who was in Dallas who had an independent crime scene cleanup business
Mhm.
that he sold to private equity. He moved to Florida. He bought another one. He sold that one to private equity pretty quickly. He had told me kind of something similar, where in terms of like, it was surprisingly easy to find people. You know, a lot of people like don't want to do it. There's plenty of people that, like you said, would enjoy the variety and don't mind the gruesomeness of it all, right?
Yeah, and there's the other aspect to it is people get some purpose from helping people during, after a tragic time. We're there right after they just had a whirlwind of people in the house and decisions
Yep.
and things like that. And it's probably the first time they've ever dealt with something like this, so we can at least be there and spend some more time with them and walk them through everything
Yep.
and try to help them in other ways besides just cleaning up the scene.
Someone dies unexpectedly, right? And they're discovered. Can you walk us through like what's like the actual cleanup process look like? What are you actually doing?
I mean, they're all similar in certain ways. You get the call, find out when we can get there, because sometimes the police are still there and we can't start till they're
Yeah.
finished. So find out when we're going to get there. Once we arrive, we talk to whoever's in charge of the estate
Yep.
member or property manager, and then we have to prepare all of our equipment, get all our suits on, the biohazard
Yep.
suits on, do a walkthrough. We usually I train my guys to just walk through the whole house, because sometimes you're find stuff in other areas of the
Yeah.
house and
Dead animal or something, right?
yeah, or sometimes people are sick before they pass away. They might have vomited or
Yeah.
something somewhere, and so do a walkthrough of the house, come up with the remediation plan and the safety plan, talk about it with your employees, assign roles of who's going to be, like the primary the lead technician, field technician. Then once you have your plan, you just get started. We use proprietary chemicals. We treat everything. Certain items or materials have to get removed and bagged up and disposed of. Some stuff can be remediated on the scene. And then if there's any odor that remains, we deal with that at the end. We have certain machines we use to remediate the odor.
You're doing nothing with the body, right? Because the coroner comes,
Right.
removes the body.
Yeah.
Some other people have told me some of it is similar work to remediation, where you're cutting out drywall or removing floorboards, depending on like the severity of it all.
Yeah, it's pretty similar that way. There's certain rules where, if like for example, any porous material like carpet or anything like that, if it's affected by it, the EPA says there's no proper way to decontaminate that. So we have to, remove carpet. If something got through floorboards, we remove that. But most other hard surfaces we can
Get clean.
Yeah.
And then how do you determine the pricing?
It's based on a few things: tech hours, how much chemicals you use, was it an emergency call out, like after hours or holiday, things like that. How much was your biohazard disposal costs? What kind of equipment did you have to use and supplies?
Do you have an idea ahead of time when someone asks what's this going to cost? You just kind of give them a bracket, and then the final bill will be based on those factors.
It's real hard to say without seeing the scene. If it's just on the phone, the initial phone call, we usually tell people that it can't get into the thousands of dollars, but we can bill your insurance for that. But we can give you a more accurate estimate once we see it. Once you see it, you can kind of give them a better idea of what it'll cost.
We billed to the insurance company.
Yeah, typically.
They don't really care then, right? For the most part.
Yeah, most of the time. There's sometimes people just really want to know the price before we do anything, because for whatever reason, if they're worried insurance, some people I think just are worried insurance might not cover it because they've never heard of something like this before.
And are you able to confirm that on the policies before?
Yeah, we do sometimes if they're concerned about it. I've never had a homeowner's policy, just your regular homeowner's policy, not pay for it. So I tell them that. I tell them, if you want to, we can get a claim started before we get started. But most people just want it to get done first, because they just don't want it, sitting there in their house.
Talk about like on the lead gen side. So you're buying Google ads, because I imagine that's one of the things people will search. What are some other ways that franchisees go and get leads and build I'm sure it's relationship based, right?
Yeah, it's 100% relationship based. There's just a lot of different people we talk about in their initial training class that you have to build relationships with and get their trust for them to refer you on jobs like this. But primarily it's any person you could think of that would be at a scene like that. So police, firefighters, coroners, funeral homes, property managers, like, anybody you can think of that would be there. We try to talk to them.
Are there like conflicts of interest in terms of like working with the police department? I assume some of them probably can't make like official recommendations, but can they make unofficial recommendations? They know you and like you're a big, you go to the beef and beers or whatever, you support the police department type of thing.
Yes. The vast majority of the country, I tell the people, when you start talking to the police, they have no idea who you are. Most police are pretty skeptical of people, and most police departments will have a written policy that say you can't refer any company for any specific service. Yeah. But they do, because I was a cop, and they do. It takes some trust in them getting to know you, and they'll find kind of gray areas around that policy of getting your name out there. But as part of the reason I do what I do when our franchises open is anytime a franchise opens, they come to a week-long training class in St. Louis. And then when they open, I go to their market for their opening week, and I'll go around and help them market. They especially want me to help them with the police departments, because being able to tell them
you're a cop.
It just kind of helps open some doors for them.
So when a new franchisee opens, is lead gen their biggest challenge?
Yeah. Consistency of jobs when they're new is the biggest problem. When they've been in business for a while, it's accounts receivable and employees. Tracking down the money that's owed to you from insurance companies and dealing with employees.
Every restoration or any guys that deal with insurance, that's always a pain in the ass. This is like a totally new industry, right, for a lot of people to think about. And if they don't, like, you don't deal with trauma every day, you're like, how often is this happening? How big is this market? It's that lead gen I think most people really think through. And that's like the concern. So it's figuring out a way to break through that.
Yeah, that's always the big concern for new franchises, for sure.
So how many franchisees do you have today?
We have 13 now, but we might be open in 14 and 15 before the end of the year.
What are the qualities that you're looking for in franchise owners?
So there's no specific background, because I've found all different kinds of backgrounds have done well. It's really more of like a personality type. How good are they talking with people? How passionate do they seem about doing this? Do they seem like they can withstand the ups and downs of starting a new business? Things like that. I talk to them a lot about, why do you want to get into this? And then ask them some hypothetical questions, like, if something like this happens, how do you think you would handle that? Things like that. So it's more just kind of feeling the personality type.
What are their skills? What are their goals? Like, why do they want to do this? In my opinion, at least, they don't have to be passionate about crime scene, right? But it's like, they have to be passionate about solving the problems that come with it. And this, it's, helping people in need in a time of need. It's being an essential business that, like, no matter what the economy is, like, things are going to happen, right? And being reliable and being there for people.
If their only reason is just to make a lot of money, that reason's probably not going to keep them going through everything.
Yeah, the tough times, because it could be a while till they make money, or whatever. You go through ups and downs in any business. Right. What are some of the big differences between someone who's looking at T.A.C.T versus Bio1, or one of the bigger, more established companies?
Well, besides price, I mean, last I heard, I think we're cheaper. From what I hear from the franchisees, the training is I believe top of the line. With my background, I've been in their position before, so there's a lot of stuff I changed with T.A.C.T that I saw a lot of franchisees hated with Bio1s. I think I'm a lot more franchisee friendly, which some people say that's a mistake. I think we've created a really good group of people. Everybody talks to each other on pretty much a daily basis. We have different groups where everybody helps each other. I really try to focus on the technology part of it, so we always try to stay on top of everything as far as like the equipment that we can use and like software and stuff like that. I'm really involved with everybody. I'm emotionally involved with their success, to a fault. Yeah. I'm talking to them every single day. Like I said, I'll go to their hometown. I've even gone back a couple times if they're having a tough time trying to figure stuff out. I've gone back, and helped them again. So I think they just get a lot more hands-on training and mentorship and things like that.
I always say, like, people have to align with the culture, right? And so, like, especially a big Bio1 has hundreds. I don't know, 120 locations, something like that. Probably.
Something like that.
So you get it in there, you're later on, it's private equity owned. Like, there's probably less, not that they don't care as much, but like, you care more than they are going to care, right? About the success of the franchisees. And they can work shoulder to shoulder with the founder, and they have a question, you're going to answer them, versus, whatever, you're part of kind of a bigger machine, right? And some people, that's what they want. They want the bigger machine. And other people kind of want to work, more in that startup-ish vibe of, hey, we're working with the founder, we're working together, things are changing, you adapt quickly, you can move quickly, and it's not perfect, but like you're constantly trying to get better versus, a giant elephant. It'll get there, but it's going to take a lot slower to adapt to AI and whatever, new technology and all the things that you're probably, on the forefront of. It's a personal preference too for a lot of people, what kind of environment they want to work in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people I hear that when they come over, they said that, the guys who've worked in the corporate world and stuff, they say that they're just so sick of the corporate world culture that this was kind of the antithesis of that. And they just like the culture here because it's more of like a friends and family culture here. Everybody's got personal relationships with each other and helpful.
You mentioned some of the new technology. Can you speak to some of that in terms of what are some things that you guys are working on that are kind of like on that leading edge there?
I mean, most of it's not my creation. We have really good people that work with the websites and things like that. But they're, like you said, working with AI, helping with blogs, social media stuff. But a lot of it's more on because I can't speak in great detail about what they're doing, but we have monthly calls where they explain everything that they're going on, that's going on with them. But it's a lot more of like there's a lot since COVID. There's a lot more technology on the remediation part of it too. So there's certain machines that we use for decontamination and odor removal and things like that I don't think a lot of other companies are using now.
Yep, that just makes the job quicker, right? And
right.
Safer and probably a better end product and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Quicker and safer, and like you said, it just makes sure that the job's done better at the end.
If you had a franchisee that came in and it was like when you first started, they wanted to own multiple markets. They really wanted to grow this thing into a $10 million business or whatever, 10 markets doing $1 million each or whatever the numbers would be. Like, how would you sit down and kind of coach them through the playbook from going from that one to then just start to expand out? Kind of walk me through that conversation of how you would do it specifically in this business.
Yeah, we have one guy that's working on that right now. He said he wanted to do that from the start, so that was helpful because I could kind of coach him in that direction. But, I would tell them no later by the end of the first year should you not be going on jobs anymore. Obviously, don't spend the money that you make. You want to save it up.
You're doing everything. You're going to job sites. You are estimating. You're managing the crew. Assuming someone's starting small and they're on a smaller budget, they're learning the business, building their teams up, trying then to probably have maybe their lead technician that they can eventually elevate into that GM role. And imagine, within 9 to 12 months that they don't have to go to a job site because they have a team now that can function without them.
Right.
And then the money that they're making now, instead of buying a boat or a car or whatever, they're keeping that into the business and are saving it in order to deploy into the next, kind of that next evolution.
Yeah. And within his first, I believe it was his first year, close to that, he ended up buying his second franchise, and he's pretty close to buying his third one now. And he's been in business for 2 years. So I just tell him, you just want to either buy more territories or expand your revenue streams, or do both. Because something I do it's different from the other biohazard companies, I do give them the option to get into water restoration. So if they want to become like a full restoration company, they can. And one of my franchisees that you and I both know, he's gotten into that, and it's working out really well for him.
And you don't think that's a distraction to them rather than staying focused on crime?
I did think that, and it can be, but I find that all the franchises, they find like their niche thing. So, and I'm open to new ideas. I don't tell everybody like it's this is my way or no way. So that franchisee in particular, he's one of many that they just try a bunch of different stuff and see what works. And just by chance, this apartment complex that he was marketing to, they had a big flood in their area, and they knew of him, and they called him and just said, all the restoration companies are busy. Is there any chance you guys do water restoration? He just called me and said, how can we get this water restoration done?
How do I do water restoration?
Yeah. Luckily, he had a water restoration certified technician that was already working with him.
Okay. So he knew what to do.
Yeah. And it was like, we got to make sure you have the insurance for it. I knew a way that he could get all this equipment he needed. We worked it out. Turned out to be a massive record-breaking month for him, for the whole company. He's just been sticking with that ever since then. So I'm like, if that's what's working for him now, I talked to him. He said, I want to really build this up. And then next year, once this is up and running, I'm going to really focus on the biohazard stuff. If they get a niche that's really working for them and they want to make sure that's like their main revenue stream and then try to focus on the other stuff, I'm okay with that.
It seems to me that the bio, you have crazy margins on it, right?
Yeah.
The margins on crime are significantly higher. It seems to me that you could do 3 or 4 restoration jobs and make the same money as like one crime scene cleanup.
Yeah. The difference between those, the margins are higher, but
the volume's higher on the other.
Right. There's more water jobs than there is suicides.
How often does the hoarding happen? And is that, I'd assume that's a little bit lower of a margin work?
Yeah, it's a little bit lower, but it's way more frequent. I mean, some of our guys get multiple hoarding calls every single week, but it's surprising how common it is. But yeah, it's a little lower margins.
Is that cash paid?
Yeah, it's always private paid, unless it's an undiscovered death, and it has to be a pretty severe one. Insurance will pay for the hoarding part too sometimes, but 99% of the time it's private pay.
About over 10 years ago, my dad and brother and I, we were buying rental properties in a lower income area. We came across so many hoarders. One of the ones we ended up buying, and we cleaned it out, but it took days of cleaning it out. And, luckily, we have guys with trucks and driver, whatever, for the auto repair business. We were able to just bag things and take them because we had dumpsters, at the stores. Right. But yeah, it's pretty prevalent. I mean, it's sad.
It is surprisingly really common. And most people, when we get these kind of calls, especially if the hoarder passed away or they got taken to like assisted living or something like that, the family had no idea that it was even going on because they haven't been there in so long. So, yeah, it's really, really common.
Yeah. And is that process similar of like you trying to separate what's good versus trash, or is it kind of the family's discretion to say, hey, just whatever, throw it all out, or they want to go through it?
Yeah, we tell the family, we can do as much or as little as you want. We can't just tell, the family, like, we have to. Our typical job is we ask them if there's a way they can make a list or go through and just write down things that no matter what the condition is, they want to keep it. Well, either depending on what they want to do, but typically it's discard everything they want to get rid of. Sometimes there's stuff they want to donate, and then decontaminate the house. Sometimes deep clean the house, and then put everything back together. And
for pricing that, is that kind of like how many man days do you think it would take plus what you estimate the dump fees would be?
Yeah, it's how many techs are you going to, especially if they have a timeline, how many techs do you need there? How many days is it going to take? How many dumpsters are you going to use? Yeah, that's the primary ones. Like, and then what conditions are we dealing with? Is there the sewage backup? Is there mold? Things like that.
Yeah, so you have like a multiplier for the grossness of it.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I mean, that's all the kind of things I had. Interesting business. I mean, it sounds like you have franchisees having a ton of success. So
yeah,
excited to kind of watch them grow and, continue to learn about the business.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And if anybody listening wants to learn more about T.A.C.T, reach out to my team. Happy to get you connected and help you kind of go through the process.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right.